Western science, I believe, is dead. I think that's because we're moving into this AI era, and naturally we're going to be looking more at how consciousness and science works in much more detail as AI emerges.
What's our plan? What's our plan? How are we taking the fractal theory of universe and how are we coming together with ancient theory of everything? What's our plan so that it's spread all around the globe and everyone are aware about the gaps of modern physics and the positives of what we are working on?
Yeah, thank you so much, Arif. I'm so excited that we're putting together now the concepts, the ancient theory of everything, the geometric universe, and the new discoveries around Kailash.
Newton's. So that's pretty.
Hello universe! Welcome back to yet another episode of AD Podcast. आजको एपिसोड एकदमै स्पेशल र एकदमै इन्ट्रेस्टिङ रहनेछ किनभने आज हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ द 3 genius masterminds running behind physics. Yes, you got me right. आज हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ साइन्टिस्ट आरिफ अली जो अथर अफ फ्रम न्युटन टु नाउ हुनुहुन्छ र साथसाथै उहाँ युथ अफ द नेसन 2023 पनि हुनुहुन्छ र आज फ्रम अ भेरी डिफरेन्ट पार्ट अफ दिस अर्थ हामीसँग स्पेशल गेस्ट हाइकी बेलेक फ्रम जर्मनी जो जियोमेट्रिक युनिभर्स नामक पुस्तकको लेखक पनि हुनुहुन्छ र साथसाथै हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ कलिन पावर्स उहाँ चाहिँ इन्टु इन्फिनिटी अर्गनाइजेसनको लिड रिसर्चर हुनुहुन्छ एन्ड यस इट इज अ भेरी इन्ट्रेस्टिङ टक बिट्विन दिज 3 genius minds. Let's enjoy the episode.
Yeah, talking about modern physics, the main theory, the relativity, is not finding compliance with quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics itself is not finding its final interpretation, right? We have a lot of. So I also feel like modern science is at a serious dead end, right? And I would like to hear a little from Heike. Like, what's our plan? What's our plan? How are we taking the fractal theory of universe and how are we coming together with ancient theory of everything? What's our plan so that it's spread all around the globe and everyone are aware about the gaps of modern physics and the positives of what we are working on?
First of all, I want to just tell you that you're completely right that old school science is saying that, because I was just talking to like an old school physicist who was actually reviewing paper, and he exactly admitted that. He said like, yeah, we don't know. We just don't know how reality works. That's it. He gave up. And I was like, what? You gave up? I think, so the number one thing is not to give up. Okay. Yeah. So if something's not working, maybe you just have to go back. Yeah. And just like, okay, maybe the mistake was like down the line.
Yeah.
Like, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, because you're building your things on all of these things that maybe they were actually wrong already. Yeah. So what do we do? How do we do? I mean, I guess, it's about really talking about it, it's about explaining it and also to realize it's not that complicated. Actually, we are teaching children about how the atom looks like and how shapes work. And it's actually like, using art and tactile tools. And then you realize you don't need to learn all these complicated equations. You can make something very visual. And as we are visual beings, most of the information we're taking through our eyes and through our hands and touch, it stays with us much deeper than some of the mental concepts. So, yeah, we want to bring this knowledge out. We have actually already created, kind of like a schooling system that helps people to go through these concepts, like really simply.
From the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
Because ultimately it's about geometry. You need to understand geometry and what geometry opens up. Because geometry is, in a sense, the foundation. It's like kind of like the structure. And once you have that structure inside of you, and it's like, really, it's not really that complicated. But once you have that, then you can go on and say, okay, what about music? What about quantum physics? What about cosmology? What about chemistry? everything all of a sudden falls into place because you already know the blueprint.
Yeah.
Once you have the big picture, then it's easy to actually unravel all of these phenomena that we can observe because they're just an aspect of that blueprint.
Yeah.
Like, for example, light. You know, we're talking about light today and the ether. It's a geometric function. You know, we say that light is a wave. Well, it's a wave, it's a spherical wave. But internally, it has an electromagnetic component, right? And these are 90 degrees to each other. Well, 90 degrees, well, that's a cross, you know?
Yeah.
And the square has a cross. Then we have this idea of inverse square law of light that, you know, it's just dissipating the further away it is.
luminosity, right?
And that's also based on squares. So you see, we have to shift our perception from, you know, looking at, let's say, matter and what matter is doing to the space it exists in. And once we make that transition from, you know, matter, the water,
Only
in the
matter
glass,
to matter.
exactly, to the glass, you're just shifting into the space, then things start to become very, very simple. And I think that's where the secret lies. It's like starting to shift our perception to geometry. That's number one. And we can use art and we can use music to explore these things. And we already know, you know, that these are educational methods that have been known to accelerate our way of understanding. That there's ways that we can actually learn to become geniuses. Each and every single child can become a genius with these methods, with these accelerated learning methods. So yes, that's one of our missions, to bring it out as educational tools and making it accessible, giving people a kind of like a harmonic understanding of the universe. Because that's basically was one of my biggest, criticism when it came to science, you know, because if you become a PhD in something, you're PhD and you're very smart or whatever, but actually you're not. You're just really specialized in a very particular tiny field and you're losing a little bit the oversight. And I think that's what we're bringing. It's like, don't become so immersed into the detail. You can, but really what needs to happen is you need to understand the bigger picture. And once you start to understand the bigger picture, then the pattern will emerge. And I think that's where the power lies. So that's one aspect, you know, just like publishing the knowledge, which has become very helpful now with AI. And the second part is actually showing working models. Because a lot of people don't believe, even if it makes logical sense or whatsoever. Sometimes people have to die, and then it's like 100 years later, you know, they were right. But today we're living in a world where technology is quite amazing, you know. Yeah. And with AI and all of that, we have now the capacity to show and to prove that these models are working, and they're working better than what we currently have. And that's the second part, and why we also come to Nepal. We want to manifest those technologies and show the world that actually our theory is not just a theory. We have a working model, and that working model is gonna rock.
So when I say that, you know, Western science, I believe, is dead, I think that's because we're moving into this AI era, and actually we're going to be looking more at how consciousness and science works in a much more detail as AI emerges. Secondly, what I see, and this is no joke, is that when I start to do analysis of some of, you know, science's propositions to how do we deal with environmental crisis and other things like that, what you see is incredibly expensive ideas which are, you know, untested and add more pollution to the biodiversity, and that's their view. You know, you just pour more toxic chemicals into the thing and hopefully it fixes itself. You know, and, you know, look at what Western science has done to the West. It's built lots of nuclear power stations right on the coastlines of all of these countries in the West. We don't have that here, thankfully. And I would say that's an extremely dangerous position to place all the lives of those people in. And I think science needs to be taken into account for all of that, because basically it has not got a single clue about what radiation actually is, I don't think. And furthermore, it couldn't even explain why there's so much uranium left on planet Earth, because it doesn't have a proper theory about that. And furthermore, I think what it's done is it's dug up all of that stuff and has put it and compiled it in such a way that it's providing a health risk now to human beings. And so, you know what I mean? Everything, when you look at what Western science has done, has been a complete disaster for the last 100 years almost. And what we see is that where the innovations have come out, it's not science, it's engineering, and it's the engineers who have pioneered the next generation of technologies. Nothing to do do with science, and yet science sits back and takes the credit like it is something. Now, what I'm going to say is Western science is about to be proven completely wrong more and more as AI advances, and actually all of that money that IBM have just spent on quantum computing, they're going to realize we've just wasted it. And actually, what will happen is those guys who are working on those systems, if they don't come on board and start producing systems for people rather than for corporates, is that they're going to end up being taxi drivers or something like that, because eventually the corporates ain't going to fund them anymore. And that's the truth, right? It's too expensive, got zero results. God particle, what did it do? Nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what I'm saying is, how much more money do we need to spend on useless, inadequate Western science, which doesn't even consider consciousness properly and has got no way of actually working with AI in a sophisticated manner, and is so dogmatic that when we come with new science or we come with new mathematics, it sort of prevents us even from talking on the forums because it's so scared of losing its little position within the consciousness of humanity. And that's why we are suggesting we don't need a Western science system. We don't need to be peer-reviewed by idiots who are destroying the planet. What we need to do is set up our own systems and peer-review ourselves and produce technology that works for the people.